Welcome to The Business That Pays with Adam Tolliver from Artisan Financial Strategies, where we mind the business that pays you. In this podcast, we empower successful families and business owners to make informed decisions about their finances through courageous conversations. Through his expertise as a practicing investment advisor representative with Eagle Strategies, LLC, a registered investment advisor, Adam teaches you how to create a wealth ecosystem by combining a practical technical framework with your personal, family, and community values. Join us for this journey where Adam normalizes sustainable wealth building and gives you the keys to make courageous, proactive financial decisions.
Welcome back to the Business That Pays podcast with Adam Tolliver of Artisan Financial Strategies. I'm Patrice Sikora. In the last episode, we learned about Adam. This time around, we'll focus on how he operates, his planning process that involves steps to assess, clarify, and track. Adam, talk to me first about assess. Is this how you begin with all of your clients?
Yes, absolutely. The assess portion of the planning is really about laying the framework. The financial plan is really about putting down a blueprint that's going to help you measure and inform the critical decisions that you need to make around your financial life. And so that includes for your family, that includes for yourself, for your business. And so it's really all about just taking a snapshot to get a feel for where we actually are right now. We're checking for your essential financial vital signs so that we have good benchmarks to measure from moving forward. And those benchmarks become really important for your future decision making.
You say you use, I think, 2 key benchmarks, right? Tell me about those.
That's correct. So we want to have sort of a global benchmark that is based on your age, based on your income, based on your family makeup, how much or where should you be in your financial journey? So how much should you have saved? How much should you have invested? How much debt should you reasonably be in? And all of this, of course, exists within a range because it's very general, that first benchmark. But once we have that, we're also establishing your personal benchmark that we will then track to revisit over time to see how the progress goes. So where you are on October 16th, 2020, we'll have the same conversation on October 16th, 2021, or, somewhere around there to say, this is where you were, this is where you are, and we can continue to track that throughout time. So you've got your personal benchmark, and then you've got the global benchmark based on what's reasonable for someone your age, which of course is going to vary and needs to be contextualized, but we'll talk about that as well.
How long does it take to do this, to pull together all this information?
It's going to vary because, different people have different amounts of information that they've accumulated over the years. But this is really as simple as I send a homework list, and there are a list of key items. Some will apply to you and some will not, which is totally normal. But if you can gather as much of what's on that homework list, and this is going to include things like bank statements and W-2s and 401k and retirement statements, credit card statements, revolving debt, all of those things to be compiled so that I can start to put them all together and organize them. And then, so most people, it'll take, it's really about how busy their life is. Most people, they'll get it back to me within a couple of days. Sometimes it may be a week or so, but people get to it when they get to it sometimes.
Do people ever express surprise at what they've come up with? They look at it and think, or say to you, I didn't realize I had so much of this, or I didn't realize this.
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest points of this assess phase in the planning is to take inventory. And a lot of times when you're taking inventory, the same way when you take inventory of the things that are in your house, or people don't realize how much stuff they have until it's time to move or something like that. It's a moment to hit pause and sort of refresh and figure out what's what. And in the process, people do find out a lot of things. One of the key components of this assess phase is that you are doing a budget. And it's really funny because people will say, well, I've never really done one, so this has been really eye-opening. Or they'll say, we did one, but we did it like 2 years ago and I didn't realize how much it's changed. And so that sort of self-discovery along the way in this
Yeah.
process tends to be very illuminating and helpful for clients.
That whole budget process. Oh, yeah. So you've got a budget. Do you keep it? That's another
Exactly.
question. Yeah.
Right.
All right. Moving on from assess, you have clarify as the next step. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so clarify is really where we get into the heavy lifting, and we might call this the meat and potatoes. So it's one thing to take inventory of where we are. You've got our snapshot, which is absolutely important because it's difficult to get anywhere you want to go without knowing where you're starting from. But now we need to bring context and personal meaning to your finances. What does this actually mean for you? These numbers will tell us something. But I always tell my clients that what we do is about money, but it's really more so about how money is used in your life and what type of value does money bring to you and how does it reflect your values.
Right.
And that's a lot of what we're doing here. So we're going into really getting an understanding of what is your desired future state for you and your family. If we look up 5 years from now, what is going to be the most desirable outcome for you 10 years from now? It's difficult to get specific about anything 30 years in the future, but if we start to lay a framework and we know where we want to go with it, that's going to be really helpful. What we're also doing here is cleaning up the information that we got from our assess phase. So we want to make sure that it's all accurate, and we want to understand what the priorities are based on the information that we've gotten. So you may have some goals and you may have some issues, but your issues may be so big that we need to address the issues before we can start to address the goals. So we are assessing what are our resources available, and what's most important, most pressing for us to prioritize to make sure that we get to, so that we can continue to move the ball forward.
Do
And then,
people?
I'm
I'm
sorry,
sorry.
go ahead.
Do people, are they surprised again here when they look at their priorities and they see their current situation? It would seem to me that all of us have great dreams. We all know what we would love to have in 5 years,
Mhm.
but are we living in reality?
This is where things tend to get a bit difficult because I always tell people part of my responsibility is to help you build a plan that moves your money in reflection with what you value,
Hmm.
what you say you value. And very often, if we're not tracking and measuring, we will find out that we've been spending our money or doing things with our money that is not a reflection of what we intend or we believe our values to be. And so getting a look at how things have been going and then trying to marry that with the vision of the way we want them to go can be a very jarring process, and people do get kind of surprised. And it depends, I of course I have clients who are doing well but realize, like, oh, if I just do a couple of things different, closer to some of these goals than I thought I was.
Right.
And then there are others who get a wake up call, like, okay, I knew that I wasn't necessarily all together, but I didn't realize how much time I had been missing. And so the range absolutely varies, but for the most part, yes, people are surprised because the formal work of the process of planning is not something that they've done before.
Right.
And so that does tend to be the case.
All right, then identifying your desired future state. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so when I think about your desired future state, again, keeping in mind that we're talking about money, but then we're also just talking about life. But so much of this just the function of the world that we live in. And one of the reasons that I do what I do, I believe that, people work really hard for their money. And so it's important that we are mindful and good stewards of that money once we receive it, and that we are making sure that the money works as hard for us as we do for it, and ultimately one day harder. And so desired future state is about thinking through the type of emotions and feelings that you want to have about your financial situation.
Hmm.
Typically, people want to move away from one emotion and closer to another one. So we're moving away from anxiety and more towards confidence and security. We want to move more towards comfort. And what does that mean for you? So we want to get a good feel for what it is that you want for yourself, for your family, for the people you love. And then we want to put numbers to that to say, okay, what does security look like for you? For one person, short-term security might be, well, if I've got 3 months of my expenses saved, then I feel good. Well, another person who maybe has a good income, but it's a variable income because they're, in sales, let's say they're a realtor or something. So they make a lot of money, but they don't always know when the next paycheck is going to come. They might say, well, 3 months is cool, but personally, I don't feel comfortable unless I have 9 months. And so when we talk about desired future state, we're thinking based on where you are now financially, what are some of the things that you would change that are going to make you feel much better about where you are financially? And then we want to start to put numbers to that. And that's how we'll start to track the goals.
You mentioned earlier that many people haven't done this before. And now here you're talking about defining financial wellness, the future state, understanding the current situation and priorities. What is the wording that you use? How can people do people understand, I should say? Do people understand what you're telling them if they haven't done this before?
So this is a huge part of the clarify phase of planning. Clarifying is to clarify for myself as an advisor and for you as a client so that we can get grounded in common language and terminology. And we do that through education. I'm being educated by my clients on what their preferences are, how they want to be communicated with, what they respond to, what they don't respond to. And like I said, when we're having conversation, people can say, well, I want to create generational wealth for my family. Well, what does that mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
I need to know what that means. And of course, they might not be able to articulate it. So that's part of the process, us having the conversation to tease that out so that we can land on something that we both can agree with and I can make it measurable, right?
Right.
And then the other part of that is I have a lot of educating to do because there's a language barrier typically. And this language barrier exists in almost any professional interaction. So if you are a layman talking to an attorney, they know legalese and you do not. And so it's similar in my world where there's a bunch of financial jargon and there's a lot of information on the internet. So you can go out there and you can learn it and you can look up different definitions, but you're not fluent in it. And so we build the education process into the planning process so that we can get grounded in that common terminology. And when I say something, you know what I mean. And you feel more confident having the conversation back and forth with me.
Right.
And then we overlay that basic technical information with how our philosophy and strategy align with what we're doing for your plan.
A lot of people, I'm sure, don't like to admit that they don't understand what you're saying or what you're talking about. Do you just kind of
Yes,
do
absolutely. Absolutely. So my clients are always really smart, really successful people who are well accomplished in their own right, in their own fields. And there is a certain level of discomfort and shame when you feel like you don't know something in a particular area of life that is so critical for everyone. And I mean, you name the profession, we're talking really, really sharp, accomplished people. And that part can be uncomfortable. I always reiterate that this education process is a two-way street. And part of my role, number one, is that I take all of my clients through it because I'm really just level setting the field so that we both understand the language that we're speaking. The clear communication aspect of this is critically important. And so, regardless of experience level or familiarity, everyone starts on this level set field. And that can take a lot of the anxiety away from that discomfort of not knowing.
Right. Is this also the step, this clarify step, when you start to recommend courses of action?
Yes. So we're at the end of the clarify step. We've gone through assess where we've gathered all your information, we've cleaned it up, we've contextualized it. We are now understanding how and where You have your opportunities and your weaknesses, things that we want to shore up and clean up. So we're at a place where we can make some recommendations, but also you've been educated to understand what we're measuring and why we're measuring it and what is the ideal picture of a healthy financial plan in these different areas. So we've gone through at this point investments 101. We've gone through retirement planning and estate planning and life insurance and risk management 101. So we've done basic education in all of these areas. So now, once we make recommendations, you have all of that context to help you understand why we came to some of the conclusions that we came to. And so that's a huge part of Clarify, is actually coming to the conclusion of what we need to do first based on the resources available and the prioritization of what's really urgent and what can we track later.
Do you lead people to come to their own conclusions, or do you put things on the table and say, this is what you must do?
We always try our best to give options, because ultimately this is your plan and you need to take ownership of it. And a big part of what we do in the education piece is give you the pros and cons of a different approach or strategy. And we explain why we believe in our approach. And so anytime we give recommendations, there's always an option to take them or leave them. But in those recommendations, we give detailed explanation as to why we're recommending it and when we're recommending it. So I may say, disability insurance should be a priority for you at this point because of your profession, extremely specialized. We don't want that income to be in jeopardy. So we need to take care of this right away. And so if we're having a conversation about risk management, you're trying to figure out, well, how at risk am I for getting injured and not being able to perform my job? And so you may want to address that now. You may want to address it down the road. We make the recommendation very specific. So I will say, based on where you are right now, we can probably afford to do this in the next 12 to 18 months. Or I'll say, based on where you are right now, it is absolutely imperative that you get this done right away. And so we make it very specific, while also teasing out what are the other options and what are the implications of action or inaction.
So this framework that you're actually creating is flexible.
Absolutely. And it has to be flexible because life is flexible. Over time, our priorities are going to shift. Life is going to throw us curveballs. Things are going to change. It might be a job change. There might be a change in family growth. There are all types of things that can happen. And so we want to set out on building a strong framework that is flexible and can be prepared for whatever might come. And so that's always important.
And that leads me to tracking. Tell me about the track portion of your plan.
Yes. So remembering that we are working from a framework, the foundation is going to cover the fundamentals, right? But long-term flexibility as life evolves and changes is absolutely critical. And so at least once a year, you're going to have our annual review, which is a full-fledged going through detail by detail. This is what we did initially. This is how all of those things that we set up are tracking and performing. These were the problem areas. This is how those are doing. These were the opportunities that we wanted to work towards. That's how this is going. So we're going through and combing to make sure that we're keeping track of what we've already done. Then we also want to have conversations about what's new and what's changed and how does that measure versus what we've done. Do we need to make any adjustments? Do we need to shift priorities? Do we have any new goals or aspirations that need to be addressed? And how do we build that into the current plan? And in the meantime, so that's the once a year annual review. In the meantime, we're doing phone calls at least quarterly. Maybe a phone call, maybe an email, but it's a check-in to touch bases to make sure that, along the way, if something comes up, because the reality is I'm hired to oversee and do this for you because you're living your life. Essentially, you've got a lot going on. And typically what'll happen in the client's world is they'll know, like, hey, like, we got to address this. We need to call Adam. And then they'll get caught up with, the kids and work and family and life. And before you know it, you look up and it's been 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months. And so we check in proactively just to say, hey, is there anything that's been going on that you have wanted to reach out or have thought about, or something that's come up, to make sure that we're not missing anything like that?
That you're reading my mind almost, because I'm thinking, how often does it happen, if it does happen, that you have to sit down with your client and say, you really should not have done that without talking to me?
This is exactly why we do the quarterly check-ins. Fortunately, it does not happen often because we are diligent about making sure that we're reaching out. And that's something that I had to learn through experience. I have had that conversation before. And a big part is you're always educating your clients on the scope of where and how you can help them. And I like to tell people from the beginning that I'm your 911 and your 411. So if you've got an emergency financially, you call me. If you've got just some general information that you need, you call me. And part of my responsibility as your professional is to constantly be building a bench and a network of resources that can help you in areas that I'm personally not an expert or proficient in. So if you are thinking about refinancing your home and you need to shop different lenders, of course, for me, it's incumbent upon me to continue to build my resources for lenders that I believe are doing good work. If you are looking for a new CPA, if you are looking for a new estate planning attorney, all of these things that are tangential to what I do, then my network is here as a resource for you. And so some people like to call it, I'm your quarterback. I'm your 911 and 411. I'm here to help you navigate those situations. And I have all types of techniques and models that I can work through to help you make those critical decisions.
I love that 911 and 411 analogy. That's fantastic, Adam. Really. Now, someone wants to talk to you. How can they reach you?
You can reach me through our website, and you can go through our website and request a consultation with me directly. So our website is artisanfsonline.com. That's Artisan, FS as in financial strategies, online.com. And you can sign up through email. You can send an email, and you can actually just go ahead and schedule a consultation with me through my Calendly link, which is on my page on the website.
Fantastic. Adam Tolliver of Artisan Financial Strategies. To subscribe to Adam's podcast, The Business That Pays, you can tap the subscribe button on this page, and of course you can also share with the share button. I'm Patrice Sikora, and let's talk again later.
Thank you for listening to Business That Pays. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of the Artisan Financial Strategies or Eagle Strategies, LLC, a registered investment advisor. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial professional provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment strategies.
Adam Tolliver, registered representative offering securities through New York Life Securities, LLC, member FINRA SIPC, a licensed insurance agency. 1125 Cambridge Square, Suite C, Alpharetta, Georgia, 30009, 404-210-9311. Financial advisor offering investment advisory services through Eagle Strategies, LLC, a registered investment advisor. New York Life Securities, LLC, and Eagle Strategies, LLC are New York Life companies. Artisan Financial Strategies, LLC, is not owned or operated by New York Life Securities, LLC, or its affiliates. Neither Artisan Financial Strategies, LLC, nor its advisors provide tax, legal, or accounting advice.